Good morning and welcome, audience, to an engaging conversation with Anjali Arandekar. She's a professor of feminist studies and founding co-director, Center for South Asian Studies at the University of California, Santa Cruz. So, I came to know about Anjali after watching an insightful and engaging dialogue with Mr. Rahul Gandhi during his recent US visit. So there I saw her making him speak on all issues concerning challenges that Indians have been facing for some time and that we all Indians have been wishing to be addressed speedily. So, welcome Anjali ji. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with the MOOC Nayak today. And I'm really excited to learn more about your work and experiences on the gender studies in South Asia.
Jai Bhim to everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this platform. MOOC Nayak has become a very important news platform for many of us, both in the diaspora and in India. So I am very grateful for the work you do, and I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Anjali ji, as a Bahujan and a queer scholar yourself, we are eager to know about your experiences that has shaped your work. So, could you tell us something about your formative years in India?
Yes, of course. So, first and foremost, as I was saying to you previously, I grew up in Maharashtra, in Mumbai. I am from a Devadasi Kalavant community, the Gomantak Maratha Samaj. My grandmothers were Devadasis. My mother and father are the first to be legally married. So, I grew up in a very robustly caste conscious Samaj where we were. Invited to be very proud of our history and to use our history for social reform and progress. Now, the Gomantak Maratha Samaj is a Bahujan Samaj, but Maratha is a word that, of course, now is attached to Bahujans who oppress other Bahujans and Dalits. But Maratha, as the term was coined during the formation of the Gomantak Maratha Samaj, was a way to unify Devadasi communities in Western India, in Portuguese India, and in British India. As many of your listeners may know, we know a lot about Devadasis in Southern India, but not so much about
In the northern
Devadasis.
side? Yeah.
Exactly. And for example, we do not know that most of Hindustani classical music and most of Hindi music was sung, composed, and delivered by Devadasis, particularly from the Gomantak Maharaj Samaj, like, of course, the
Oh,
famous Mangeshkar sisters, like Lata Mangeshkar, Asha Bhosle, Kishori Amonkar, Aarti Anklikar. So many of these histories are histories of music, but very few people talk about Devadasi's past. And my work has been a sort of a way to engage with that history and also to use that history to do more progressive work with other communities, minority communities of caste and sexuality.
okay. So, could you tell us something interesting about many recent studies you have made? Any
Well,
startling?
sorry, go ahead. One of the most interesting things about working on histories of caste and sexuality, and the good news is there are many wonderful Dalit Bahujan feminist scholars who are working on this. My friend Shailaja Paik, who has written a wonderful book on the vulgarity of caste, and also our ally Sharmila Rege, who passed away too early but was a Brahmin ally who did a lot of this work. One of the most interesting things about working on caste and sexuality is that the assumption that we often get from mainstream culture is bhai kuch hai nahi. There's no history. There are no archives. These stories have not been told. They have been disappeared. They have been erased. And one of the things that I have found, and the book that I have just finished, which will be out in August, called Abundance, is that in
Yeah.
fact there are lots of histories, very robust, complicated, joyful histories that we simply have not been aware of or are not interested in because we are so used to thinking of histories of caste and sexuality as full of injury or disempowerment or lack of joy. And my sort of goal in my intellectual, political, and in all parts of my life has been to embrace the efflorescence and joy of caste and sexuality. So one of the things that I try to write about is what would it mean to think about histories of caste and sexuality as histories of plenitude, of abundance
Okay.
instead of loss or vulnerability, because that is how we are always taught to think about. After all, the word Bahujan was invoked to invoke the power of the Bahu, the power of the majority. And I want to think about that also as an intellectual practice. What would it mean to speak from a place of empowerment rather than a place of disempowerment?
Okay. Okay. So, Anjali ji, could you tell us how these feminist studies can be used to address social justices, especially those concerning in India?
Well, I mean, one of the most obvious ways is that most of the people working on questions of domestic violence, caste segregation, sexual minoritization, urban planning, environmental sustenance, all of these questions have come out from the work of feminists who have been doing solidarity work across regions and caste. My mother, who is a very was she just recently passed away, was a very ordinary person but extraordinary in that she did so much coalition work across caste and class practices. She worked with domestic workers fighting against sexual violence. She worked with the sweeper community in our neighborhood to involve women who were sweepers and how to protect them from the kind of advances of customers and clients who would bring them into their house to clean their garbage and then expose them to sexual violence. So I think feminism is very central to social reform and caste oppression. One of the challenges has been that caste and sexuality in the past, particularly in mainstream Indian feminism, have been ignored for the most part. But I think the most exciting thing about the last 3-4 decades is that feminists across India understand that feminism is multilingual. माने बहुत भाषाओं में होता है, मराठी में, हिंदी में, तमिल में, कन्नड़ा में, और all of these
Okay.
languages create different histories of feminists. So when you say caste in Goa is very different from caste in Maharashtra.
True,
Caste
true.
in
Yeah.
Tamil Nadu is very different from caste in Kerala.
Yeah.
Sexuality is also very different. So when you say homosexuality, it doesn't mean the same thing across different regions. So I think one of
Yeah.
the most exciting things we are seeing now, and I think this is where we have to thank Hindutva. The only thing we have to thank Hindutva for is that it has created alliances between communities that would not normally have worked together. But the violence of Hindutva is so aggressive and so all encompassing that we are now seeing coalitions
Bring
happen.
several
I think
organizations under one umbrella. Yeah.
exactly right. And I think, for
Yeah.
example, during the pandemic, we saw this a lot. I worked with a lot of organizations in Maharashtra that were Dalit Bahujan organizations, which were reaching out to central Maharashtra, places like Latur or places like Nanded, where we are seeing all the violence
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on. And they work together with LGBTI organizations in urban areas to get food, water supply, etc., across to multiple regions. We had not seen this happen before. And I think it's
Okay.
because LGBT, trans, queer communities were also being ostracized during the pandemic, either by their families, etc. And many of them were either sex workers, were Dalit Bahujan. So there was a lot of convergence, which has always been there. I have
Okay.
been a feminist and a Bahujan at the same time. The two things are not separate for me. So I think in some ways, Narendra Modi's terror, his reign of terror, his anti caste, anti feminist, anti Muslim stance is so dramatically horrible that I think people are realizing ki bhai, we have to work together. We can't do
True, true,
single
true.
issue politics anymore. We have to come together in a kind of different way than we have before.
True. The adversities and calamities sometimes too good also. So in this case,
We
many
hope
Bahujan
so.
organizations are coming. Yeah. Okay. So since अब आपने मोदी जी की बात छेड़ दी है और मोदी जी अब हम आपके अमेरिका पहुंच गए हैं, so just tell me, Anjali, how do you feel that from being denied the visa in 2005, how drastically Modi ji's popularity has changed, and so much has been talked about in the social media and the main media also about a new era in the US India friendship. So do you think वास्तव में क्या जो दिख रहा है वो बिक रहा है, ये जो बिक रहा है वही दिख रहा है?
आपका सवाल बहुत कठिन है और आसान है। मैं आसान वाला पहले बताती हूँ आपको। आसान ये बात है कि मोदी जी की पॉपुलैरिटी बढ़ी नहीं है, कमी नहीं हुई। इट्स द सेम। 2005
Okay.
में I was one of those people involved in making sure he did not get the visa. His visa was denied because of the violation of religious freedoms. There was a lot of protest where there was a lot of support for Narendra Modi at the same time as there was a lot of dissent. It is the same thing now. What we see in the media right now is simply the US India prosperity story, the growth story. What we are not seeing, and you can see it if you are on social media, is the extensive amount of dissent and protest that are happening at the same time. Just yesterday, 75 lawmakers from Biden's party, Democrats who are senators, and people who are working at other levels of government have written a strongly worded letter of protest to Biden, asking him to involve questions of human rights violations in the visit with Narendra Modi. So
Oh,
on the one
great.
hand, yes,
Okay.
Narendra Modi ki popularity zarur, as we
Very.
are told
जी.
over and over again, rock star hai. लेकिन उनका
जी.
रॉक स्टार रेप्यूटेशन में बहुत सारे होल्स है एंड दे हैव ऑलवेज बिन देयर. And I think what we are seeing now is more of an accountability. Kamala Harris,
Okay.
who is Biden's,
जी. She was very
vice.
vocal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and I have been, I have written about that in the past. So the good news about media is that we have records. Kamala Harris was very critical of Narendra Modi's violation of human rights. She will probably not say anything now because aapko malum hai, ye visit is about
जी.
Ukraine, is
Officially.
about
Yeah.
defense, it's about trade. But
जी.
there is a lot of awareness about human rights violations, and we have the BBC to thank for it as well. वो BBC की documentary जब प्रसिद्ध हो गई, when it came out, and then it was banned, and the protests, the trade, the raids against the BBC offices in Delhi, all of this has become part of the story. So yes, Narendra Modi is being very welcomed, but he's also being very criticized across the board by politicians, by human rights activists, by people in the diaspora. Your audience needs to understand there are 5.4 million Indians who live in the United States. 80% of those 5.4 million Indians are Hindus. Now, for most of those people in the diaspora, Narendra Modi's vision of a Hindu Rashtra makes them think that if they are to criticize Narendra Modi, they are being Hindu phobic, which of course we know is complete nonsense. Hinduism, any religion, Buddhism are not about division, they are about solidarity. So now we have organizations called Hindus for Human Rights who are reminding people in the diaspora that Hinduism is not Hindutva. So all of this is happening. We also have caste discrimination, which is being included as a category of protection in the state of California, which I live in, which is requiring the diaspora to understand the legacy of Hindutva. So I see it as a positive awakening of the diaspora, even though I doubt it will have an immediate impact in the 2024 elections, but it will definitely have an impact along the road. And we have seen that in Karnataka, which was a big deal given
The
everything
election.
that's going on. और आगे देखते हैं मध्य प्रदेश राजस्थान में क्या होता है.
जी. जी. आपने इंडियन डायस्पोरा की बात की, कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन जो यूएस में अभी बहुत ज्यादा चल रहा है एंड एंटी कास्ट बैन मूव्स जो चल रहे हैं, उसको लेकर क्या बताएं कि सीइंग द सिचुएशन बैक इन इंडिया, हाउ इज द साउथ एशियन डायस्पोरा रिएक्टिंग टू इट? दो कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी चीजें एक साथ, पॉपुलैरिटी ऑफ मोदी इज इंक्रीजिंग एंड the जो भी marginalization and atrocities on Dalits increasing on the other hand. मणिपुर भले आप देख ले, हर जगह ethnic clashes and everything is going on. So ये दो contrasting चीजें एक साथ चल रही है, उसको लेकर के साउथ एशियन डायस्पोरा क्या सोचती है?
ये आपका सवाल बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग है क्योंकि इस सवाल में दो चीजें हैं. एक कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन जो है वो पहले से भी है, द आइडिया कि इंडिया इज अ ग्रोथ स्टोरी. ये हम बहुत सालों से सुन रहे हैं. Since I was a child and since I moved to the US to study, this was always a story. India is the largest democracy, India is a growth story, and that is something that we have to embrace. On the other hand, what we have seen is the rising authoritarianism that you are seeing. So I think in the diaspora, there is, and I think that's why, as we say, India is divided right now. The diaspora is also divided. And I want to keep reminding your viewers, your listeners, that this is something we need to remember. The diaspora is not upper caste, upper class Indians who are all in tech. The diaspora is Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Dalit, Bahujan, young, multi
Everybody.
generational. Yes, and that is important because young people, I am a university professor, so I work with a lot of young people, and they were mostly responsible for making caste discrimination a protected category. They are interested in the end to inequality. They understand inequality because they have experienced racism. So for that generation, Modi's appeal is less important. I think the generation, my generation, I'm 54, and the generation above me are the more who are attracted to that. So I think the contradiction that you are articulating is very much being felt here because we are being fed the growth story, India, democracy. But on the other hand, we are also seeing every day from the pandemic, before the pandemic, from the Gujarat riots, from what happened with the female wrestlers to Manipur, you take your pick. Everywhere you see, there's a destructive landscape unfolding. So I think people are trying to figure out how to manage this idea of the growth story of India as a bigger market. Also, the importance of India in the war in Ukraine cannot be understated. Because, for example, India's refusal to take a stance has become a huge play in this big game of power right now in Indo-Pacific, as it is called, the region of the world that is very important. So Modi's visit is also accompanied by India's purchase of a lot of defense equipment from the United States, which will then change the power game from their dependence on Russia for equipment. So all of these things are equally important. So it's impossible to say, why are we seeing this and not that? I think we are seeing everything. But the growth story is the one that everyone wants to talk about because that's what makes Modi's arrival reasonable. Because otherwise it will seem like a contradiction, right? We are invested in growth and we want to decenter China. We want to decenter other countries in the global south. So I think the messiness that you're saying is precisely what we are experiencing here and what people in India are experiencing as well. Rich people are getting richer, poor people are getting poorer. So
Yeah,
same
the divide
question
is
is,
widening.
yeah. I mean, I don't think there is any doubt for anybody. Even the Bhakts will say, yes, we have division in India. We are a divided country. If a Bhakt tells you we are united, they are lying, right? So I think this is, so the question for you and me is, when we see so much evidence around us of every single day, one Dalit Bahujan girl is raped, sexually violated, killed, we know this. So how do we live with this every day? We live with this every day
Yes.
because we turn our head and see, movies, landscapes of prosperity, investment, and growth stories. So I think this kind of schizophrenia, which is so proper in India, is also here in the diaspora. And as I said, the fear of being Hindu phobic is very, very strong. And I think what we are trying to do, those of us who are scholars, activists, is to remind the diaspora that Hinduism is not about division. Hinduism is about the caste system, Hinduism is about education, but it is not about the genocide of Muslims or the death of Dalits, right? So I think it's a balancing act. And again, I feel there's a lot of kya kehte hain, connection between what is going on in India and in the diaspora right now. In terms of what is happening electorally. 2024 is elections in India, also elections in the United States. So there is importance to this visit in many different ways.
Oh, so the president wishes to appease India, to appease the Indian diaspora there, perhaps,
Well,
keeping in view the large population.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's more, to be honest, it is more, I would say it's 100% economical. At this point in time, the United States is poised in a very dangerous game of foreign policy. In order for them to reclaim their relevance in the Indo-Pacific, they need India as an ally. China continues to be a problem, especially with its relationship with Taiwan escalating. So I think it's a geopolitical problem right now. So I think the electoral weight of Indians in the diaspora is certainly important. We have a lot of South Asian Americans who are in Congress right now, who are running, but we also have a lot of South Asian Americans who are extremely conservative, like Nikki Haley, who is our version of Hindutva, right?
Yeah.
So it is. And but I think the important thing to remember is that this is one of the few times in my lifetime that I feel like the diaspora can make a huge difference in terms of what will happen in electoral politics in India, because of
Oh,
resources,
great.
because of the global image that Modi needs to have, and because of investments, right? So I think in some ways this is a moment in which, that is why they are quoting the diaspora. That is why Rahul Gandhi was here. That is why Narendra Modi has come back so
So
many
very
times
true.
to
Yeah.
the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the large number of remittance coming in 2000, that came in 2022,
Yes, over
and
100 billion and counting. Yes.
yeah, yeah. But Anjali, there have been a long time demand for the diaspora to have the voting rights, the political
Mhm.
voting rights in India. So, what is
Mhm.
the status on that?
Well, I think it's from what I've been following it quite closely. I think they want representation, and it was one of the items on the agenda that I saw that Narendra Modi was going to be discussing. I don't think it will happen, of course, on the Indian side. I think the demand will continue to be made, but I think it's also because there is two kinds of diaspora in here. There are non-resident Indians who still have Indian passports but either have green cards or work on H1 visas or are students. And then you have OCIs, overseas citizens of India or people of Indian origin who have American passports and don't have Indian passports, right? So I think there are two different constituencies. And the NRI constituency wants the right to be able to vote from here, from if they are in the diaspora in electoral locations, and they're not being allowed to. And the OCI community wants representation because they feel that given how much they contribute financially through remittances and investments. So I think this is a long road, but it gives you a glimpse of what will happen given the increasing global supply chain, right? Given the increasing awareness of all of these questions. So I think this is not a debate that will end anytime soon, but will only increase as we go forward.
Okay, so there would be a positive step anyway in this connection. We hope.
I think it is positive in that, the diaspora becomes politicized in a way that cannot be hidden anymore, right? Because the idea is that the diaspora is, that is one of the arguments that conservative South Asians and Indians in the diaspora made around caste discrimination. Ki bhai, when we come here, caste chhod ke aate hain. And that caste is something we do in India, not in the United States. But of course, you and I know that caste is an inherited form of thinking, of discrimination, of the division of labor. So you don't let it go just because you cross two oceans. You pass it along, you live it, you are part of it in many different ways. So I think, for me, this is a very exciting moment, even though it is a moment of dire economic deprivation for so many of our comrades, because it is, people are aware, people are agitated, and especially young people in the diaspora. I've never seen so much excitement among South Asian youth and their commitment to want to engage in questions of inequality, and they want to find ways to contribute and to work with their comrades who are living in India. So I think this is a really, really important thing. And I work in South Asia myself, so I am back and forth all the time. But I see it more, both in people of my generation who are, ordinary people, and people who are in universities. They are very eager to contribute and to break this cycle. And I think we
That's
have
a
Narendra.
positive piece of news.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you know
that's
what? I think Narendra Modi, because he is so unchecked right now, from everything he's doing with the
true.
Parliament House, just सब कुछ जो कर रहे हैं, वो इतना
G,
ज्यादा कर रहे हैं कि यार लोग तो तंग आ गए. Even his
G.
own supporters, you can see the breaks in the RSS. Every day, one RSS person will say, बहुत हो गया. Narendra Modi is pushing the boundary. So I think
जी
in some ways this will crack. There is no way this can go on. And I think, we have seen that with the female wrestlers. We saw that with the
yeah
farmers' protests.
exactly
This
yeah
all happened during the pandemic. It happened after the. So we are seeing a kind of refusal to back down. And I think we have to take Ambedkar's inspiration there and believe that we can move forward, both in India and elsewhere along these questions.
आपको लगता है ये सारी जो इंसिडेंट्स है ये 2024 के इलेक्शंस में लोकसभा इलेक्शंस में कुछ प्रभाव डालेगी बीजेपी का असर कुछ कम होगा इम्पैक्ट पॉपुलैरिटी मोदी जी की
To be honest, I wish I could say yes, पर मुझे नहीं लगता. मुझे लगता है वक्त लगेगा और मुझे लगता है
ओके
और 4 साल तो लगेंगे, लेकिन मुझे उम्मीद है कि अभी जो हम देख रहे हैं, तो आपको बताया था, आपने बताया था कि आपने राहुल गांधी की बातचीत सुनी.
जी
So Rahul Gandhi, for example, is nobody's hope on one hand, but is everybody's hope on the other hand, right?
जी
He is someone that we are deeply skeptical of because of his dynastic relationship, because of his lack of experience, etc. But the Bharat Jodo Yatra that he did ignited a kind of landscape of possibility. And I've talked to so many Dalit Bahujan comrades who walked with him in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in various parts of India, and came away surprised. They said, Bhai, we didn't think this guy was going to amount to anything, but we were surprised. Now, I'm not saying the Congress is going to help us, but I'm saying the fact that the Bharat Jodo Yatra was a success and made some impact in Karnataka, right? We had a Bahujan
ट्रू
coalition in Karnataka. So
जी जी
maybe that is the template that we move forward with. Rahul Gandhi is not the answer, but Rahul Gandhi may have ignited one path
a
that
debate
may.
yeah at least a debate among the Indians कि कुछ तो बदलाव होना चाहिए ये हो क्या रहा है ये चीज तो
हाँ,
थॉट प्रोवोकिंग चीज हुई है जी
अच्छा, और बदलाव को आपको तो पता है टाइम तो लगेगा ही. तो आई एम
जी
होपफुल बिकॉज एज आई सेड, that what the two elections that are coming up, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, will tell us more if this template will move forward or not. But
जी
and we see what is happening in Maharashtra as well, right? With the BJP trying to take over, and then the mess that is unfolding. So I think we will see change, but it will take time. I'm not hopeful about 2024, but I am very hopeful about the next election after that.
okay okay that's a positive note you have given a positive feeling to the Indians who are really disturbed about the way the regime is uh, taking steps in India. ओके तो राहुल गांधी की जब चर्चा चली है आपने विस्तृत इतनी चर्चा की राहुल गांधी से he talked about the attacks on the constitution, he talked about the unemployment, about the fishermen in Gujarat, everything was spoken about that. उसमें अब आपकी क्या views है क्या इसके अंदर बदलाव होने के लिए क्या opposition, because I saw one question somebody asked him कि क्या आप step back करेंगे so that some strong opposition leader can take, because people are still not accepting Rahul Gandhi उनके परिवारवाद की वजह से. तो क्या आपको लगता है other than Rahul Gandhi is there any other strong personality who can lead India?
I don't know.
Alternative.
I don't know, but what I know, and I saw this in the letter that all the opposition parties signed when they refused to go to the opening of the Parliament House. It was the first time I saw everything from the Communist Party of India
Yeah.
to every party signed that letter, right? So for
Yeah.
me, that was a signal that the opposition parties understand that without some kind of coalition politics, they will not be able to overthrow the BJP. And I think the good thing about India is that we are a federalist project, right? So
Yeah.
state politics do matter. So as of now, I do not see a singular person, but I think it might be better that we don't, because at this point we need a political agenda, platform, vision. And I think that's what I kept asking Rahul Gandhi, right? I think, what I left feeling with that he's a very decent person, but I was not quite sure what the political vision is. As he kept saying, nafrat ke bazaar mein mohabbaton ki dukaan. And I kept
जी.
saying, yaar, बाजार और दुकान are still market economy. माहौल कैसे
जी, जी, जी,
करते हैं? I kept asking
एग्जैक्टली,
that.
या,
तो
जी,
पहले
जी,
पहले हमको माहौल बदलना है, तो माहौल कैसे बदलते हैं? माहौल बदलेंगे जब we have some kind of vision plan that everybody who is on the opposition can see a buy-in. Right now तो क्या कहते हैं, वो revolving chairs हो रहा है ना, one day one MLA is with the BJP, another one day with the Congress, another with another, so we have no political stability of vision. Now we need some kind of revolution. ये जो छोटे छोटे steps कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. And I think that's why the
जी,
Bharat Jodo Yatra was, a kind of Nehruvian vision, right? Which has its own problems, but it was this unity and diversity, all of the kind of discovery of India project that my generation grew up reading about, right? The Nehruvian vision. So I think we need something like that. I think the investment in personalities is not going to work. And I think that's why the Congress and from Mamta Banerjee to, you take your pick. We have been driven too much by that. And my hope is that the Karnataka project will give people a glimpse of what they need to do. And I hope Rahul Gandhi steps aside. I hope he does not, is not put
yeah.
forward
Keep aside
as.
his political ambitions to be a leader,
Yeah,
political
but
leader.
and I think what I liked about my conversation with him was that he seemed a better person than a politician, which is very rare. So I think his skill is better if he works with the kinds of projects he's been working
True.
on, rather than and then he proves his mettle rather than being a Gandhi, kind of
He
dynastic.
really connects well with the people of India. He has been, मतलब जो हमने भारत जोड़ो यात्रा के दौरान देखा है, कितने अपनेपन से लोगों से मिलते हैं. So it is easier for him to connect with the people and let someone else take the political lead.
Yes, I
What
agree,
I
and I
feel.
was yes, and I was very impressed with his with how he was very good around questions of gender, and how he was able to the entire conversation. He looked at me. He was very respectful, and as you know, that's not always the case. So, but again, he is not the solution. He is just part of the landscape of change that we need. We need more Bahujan leaders. We need more Dalit leaders. We need more women. And we don't have that right now. We have very few Bahujan women who are at the helm. And for now, the Congress, for example, has appointed the first Dalit woman as the head of the Maharashtra Congress, which is a big step. So I hope to
Yeah.
see more of that, because otherwise it's just lip service. We actually need people in power who can make those changes, and we need to get young people involved. India is a very young democracy. The population veers to youth, unlike the United States, where we are an aging population. So I think we have to be able to connect to the youth, figure out a platform that they are invested in. And that's where, as you said, unemployment, education, environment. We saw that already when, with the floods in Pakistan, the air quality, all of these things are going to be changing fast. So you could have all the money in the world. I grew up in Bombay. I say I was born in Bombay and I live in Mumbai. But it's very, even Mumbai, which was much cleaner than Delhi, is now has very high levels of pollution. So people are going to die no matter how much money you have if the environment is not
True.
protected. And I think young people
True.
understand that, right? You may be a bhakt or you may be a lefty, but you still have to breathe the air. So what are you going to do about it? So I think there are lots of things going on right now, and we're at a pressing point. And मैं उम्मीद करती हूँ कि आगे जाके आंदोलन होगा, but पता नहीं, we'll see.
जी, एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन और आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ अंजलि जी. How do you see, or what are some ways in which the Indian diaspora in the US can hold the Indian government accountable for all these things that has been happening?
So there are three ways in which the diaspora is very influential. One is its financial heft. As you said, India receives the largest number of remittances, and I was looking at some numbers earlier on for some other interview. In 2022, the World Bank recorded that India received $100 billion in remittances. So the financial heft of the diaspora is enormous in terms of technology, industry, most of the growth areas that India is very invested in. The second area is, of course, political heft, which is to say that, as we have also learned from a lot of scholarly research that we have done both here and in India, that a lot of the political campaigns of Narendra Modi, the RSS, the BJP, are funded officially and unofficially by capital that comes from the diaspora, right? So Narendra Modi's first campaign in 2014 got enormous financial help in terms of particularly the Gujarati diaspora in the United States and Canada. So that is a very, very important image. And the third thing is the global supply chain. There is no way the growth story of India can work. And I'll give you a very, very simple example, which I use all the time. So, about 10 years ago, the BJP, when they came into power, were very anti same sex rights in any way. For a long time, the RSS and the BJP standard lines were homosexuality is a Western construct. Uske baad, when 377 was writ down and they realized that companies would not invest, public image was very important. Slowly, slowly, they went back and said, you heard the RSS leader saying, well, homosexuality is
जी
part of our culture.
जी
Now we are back to the same-sex marriage issue, or abhi
जी
they are not willing to accept, right? So I think these kinds of public image issues, because of the global representation, are going to make a difference, because if the BJP comes out saying a lot of homophobic, transphobic things, major companies like Apple, Disney, all of these companies that invest will stop investing. Not because they are progressive, because of capital. We are seeing that happen in the United States because states that are transphobic, like Florida, Disney has taken out its investment from Florida and said you have to do better. So I think all of these things make a big difference, because jobs are the huge growth factor in any economy, and more so in India. We have such a young economy. And also, of course, China, right? China's sort of impact on growth and job output is very, very interesting.
Anjali, sorry, I forgot to mention about the changes in the NCRT textbooks and the Kishtan that is going on between parties. Karnataka, recent Karnataka changes in the revisions in the textbooks also. So, as an academician and as a scholar, how do you view this entire episode of revisions of
So
textbooks and taking out
I
major
think
lessons?
I think your viewers will be surprised to hear that we have had the same problems here in the United States with the representation of Hinduism. So a lot of
Really?
the BJP sort of Indian overseas helpers, or what are they called? The Indian overseas workers of the BJP, for example, have tried to change textbooks in the United States and to change their description of Hinduism to not be a religion that's multiple, but rather singular. So, जो आप इंडिया में देख रहे हैं with the changes in the textbooks, they are being seen across the board. The Karnataka change is a positive one, with the kind of moving out of Veer Savarkar, etc. But you see that, for example, the Nehru Memorial Library, where I spent a lot of my time doing research as a graduate student, is going to be renamed as the Prime Minister Library or something else. So we are seeing this not just in textbooks, but in the ways in which monuments, museums, archives in India are being socially engineered to produce a very different version of history. And I think as scholars, we are deeply concerned, right? The building of the Parliament House required the breaking down of buildings, the moving of archives, the destruction of very, very important archives. So this is not just about the future, it is about our past and what is being kept sacred and kept at the center as we move forward.
Ji. So, thank you so much, Anjali, for taking out time to speak with our viewers and giving an insight into various issues that have been facing by the Indians, that have been faced by the Indian diaspora there also. So, any last message you would like to give to our viewers?
No, not. I mean, I think the message I would give is the message I think Muk Nayak tries to give all the time, is that we must continue to push forward. We must continue to record our descent. and we must continue to believe in a future that belongs to us, no matter what we are seeing today around us. And I think, aage badhte hain, but we have to always remember that these are not new struggles. And I think that's where, as a historian, I take some refuge in that fact. And I believe that there is always going to be something bigger and better ahead of us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
My
And we
pleasure.
hope to see you again
Yes,
very
thank
soon.
you.